Hey, the website for this game comes with a cool extended personality-based zodiac. Ooh, this one looks pretty neat. Alright, in today's humble opinion, we're breaking out the gray face paint for Hiveswap, Act 1. Your feelings on Hiveswap are largely going to depend on your feelings about Homestuck. If you enjoyed Homestuck and aren't overly steeped in fanatical nostalgia, you're probably going to enjoy Hiveswap. If you enjoyed Homestuck and remember it as better than it was, you're probably forgetting the first couple of acts in which there was very little character development and the direction wasn't quite clear, therefore disliking the game because it doesn't meet your biased standards. If you haven't read Homestuck and have no opinion on it one way or the other, you'll probably enjoy Hiveswap because it's got a lot of the same sorts of humor, and most people that have read Homestuck seem to have enjoyed it. If you just didn't enjoy your time with Homestuck or hate it specifically because of the fans, you probably won't like this game, be it personal taste or disliking the fans and therefore anything to do with the source material on principle. Before we get into specifics, it's worth noting that the game is only about a quarter of the way finished. It's episodic in nature, as many point-and-click adventures have been doing lately, and they have 4 acts planned as well as a second game from the opposite perspective. So while there's currently only about 2 hours of content, you will likely be looking at 8 by the time it's finished, and then another 8 should you buy the second game, which feels much fairer. As for where I stand with Homestuck, I love the Homestuck. My favorite characters are the car cats, and in this series is likely going to be no different. I already like this car cat, and that car cat looks pretty cool. I wonder what this car cat is up to. Ooh. That being said, I'm not plagued with the delusions of grandeur that many of the fans seem to be plagued with. Namely, it's harder to earn my fanaticism, and I don't huff every fart the author passed my way during his various long breaks. By the end of the first hiatus, I'd already forgotten what was going on and couldn't be bothered to go back and read it all again. By the end of the second, my enthusiasm had mostly fizzled, and ultimately I wasn't happy with the ending of the comic. So I went into playing this with a bad taste in my mouth. I felt that if Homestuck couldn't even pull off Homestuck, there was no way that Hiveswap could ever hope to manage. I was pleasantly surprised. While the game certainly isn't Homestuck in the literal sense of the phrase, it definitely has the same vibe going for it. From the music, to the aesthetic, to the humor, to the uncomfortably irregular family dynamics, to the references that are so dated a lot of people will only understand them vaguely but find them amusing in their self-awareness. It's a lot like its spiritual predecessor right down to its delivery. One of the things that made Homestuck so great was that it threw a lot of information at you at once. It gave you a lot of questions that you immediately wanted answered, but rather than answer them, kept tossing more into your arms until the only way that you could hold them all was to simply accept them as they were presented and believe in good faith that they'd eventually be explained. Occasionally one would be answered to make sure that you're still there and paying attention until finally the story would hit one of its grand climaxes and knock all of the narrative dominoes down in a mystifying way. I frequently refer to this comic as a roller coaster that slowly takes its time up the initial hill before sending you through a flurry of twists, turns, and loop-de-loops. It's fantastic, and also why the ending felt a little underwhelming, but I digress. Hiveswap uses similar tactics, though arguably more effective as far as introductions go. Whereas Homestuck started as a forum-based game and gradually took its form as the author sharpened his scope, Hiveswap already knows what it is and where it's going. There's no sluggish delay when it comes to intrigue, though the steep incline of introduction is still there. You're immediately thrown into the action, and the questions already start piling up. Vague hints and curiosities line the path as you're pushed ever onwards, leaving questions enticingly unanswered. Now, you might see a few complaints along the vein of everything is just meant to keep you hooked for the next chapter, but I don't think those people are familiar with this particular brand of storytelling. The dominoes are being set in place and the ride has yet to begin. Another complaint that I've seen is that the game doesn't follow the traditional expectations of a point-and-click adventure game, which is true enough. But those familiar with Homestuck know that it was first presented as a game and used game-related mechanics as a narrative device, but ultimately was a webcomic with very little actual interactions. Hiveswap is a little bit like that, but more subtle. The mechanical structure of a point-and-click adventure is there. You pick up items and solve puzzles, though the answers are all but spelled out for you, but at the end of the day, it's more or less a glorified webcomic with interactivity that grants the developers more opportunities to squeeze in absurdist humor and flavor text. There were some missed opportunities at making things more fun to play through, like the Simon Says game, which was a chance for a fun optional achievement, or with this little maze they used as a locking mechanism that they just played out for you. Normally you can find Hiveswap on the Steam store for the price of $7.99, which feels reasonable for its quality, if not for the length of content. Especially considering that there are going to be 4 other parts of equal or greater length before the game is over. I'm compelled to say that it's worth slightly more, but I'll stand by the store price until the other acts are released. The lowest it's ever been on sale is $4.95, which would be a steal of a price to get in on things, especially since there's no guarantee guarantee that the next 3 acts will compare, though I suspect they will. If it tickles your curiosity, be sure to pick it up when it goes on sale again. For me, Hiveswap has earned an 8 out of 10 in gameplay. While it's solid and perfectly matches the overall tone and pacing of its predecessor, it still has a few things that could be tweaked in order to make it play more like a game. It generally does a good job, but there are some points in which what can be interacted with isn't exactly obvious, such as this cabinet that you couldn't interact with before but suddenly becomes plot critical later with no real indication other than it's been slightly opened. That and its missed opportunities tell me that it isn't quite as polished as it could have been. Still, it's incredibly entertaining, and this has been one of the few times I've actually laughed out loud with a game. You also, of course, don't need to have read Homestuck to enjoy it, but if you have, it will make the game that much richer. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you to What Pumpkin Studios for successfully rekindling my interest in these works. That's a hard thing to do because I'm kind of a stubborn ass, but you've managed quite skillfully. Excellent execution, and I look forward to the future installments. Until then, be sure to like, subscribe, and share if you've enjoyed this review. I could use the support now more than ever. And of course, remember that failure is not the worst case scenario, so go on with your bad selves and stay awesome.